Hello, everyone, and welcome to the My Family Strategist podcast. This podcast is all about bringing financial strategy to the chaos and overwhelm of parenting. I'm your host, Christina Spark. I am a former chartered accountant. I hold a master's in professional accounting. I have 15 years of business experience working with some of the most successful companies globally. I have a lot of titles, but the one I am most proud of is mom. In today's episode, I am tackling a big topic for a lot of parents, soon-to-be parents, people considering whether or not they should buy their very first home. I am a homeowner myself. I'm also a landlord, and I have also rented for many years. So I understand a lot of the unique benefits as well as the risks of home ownership and why it's so important to get more information so that you can make a more confident and clear choice. I am based in one of the most expensive cities in the world for home ownership, which is Sydney, Australia. I am talking a lot about the Australian housing market, and I am comparing and contrasting that to the US housing market. A lot of the benefits we cover are relevant no matter where you are in the world. There are so many opinions on the whole rent versus buy debate. And that is because there are so many benefits of home ownership, and there are also so many benefits of renting. It totally depends on your unique situation, and it very much depends on the phase of life that you're in. Most importantly, what I'm covering in this episode is some critical questions that you should definitely be asking yourself before you make the decision to buy a home. Without further ado, let's get to our disclaimer and then jump into the episode. This video is for educational purposes only and is not personalized financial, tax, or legal advice. Examples are based on my personal experience and Australian market conditions, which vary state by state and change over time. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Always consult a licensed professional before making financial decisions. I hope you enjoy the show. There are 5 main benefits to home ownership. Number 1, it's an appreciating asset. Number 2, it is automatic forced savings. Number 3, leverage. Number 4, tax breaks. And number 5 is the family joy and stability that a home will bring. So let's dive into those 5 benefits next. And after that, I will cover the 5 major benefits of renting. Buying a home is an appreciating asset. When we look at the Australian housing market, prices have doubled every 10 to 12 years. The 7-year doubling was true in the 90s, but that is a myth today. There is also a massive variation between cities. Sydney, for example, has seen prices grow roughly 450% in the last 30 years, but other capitals have lagged behind. However, home prices have significantly outpaced both inflation and wage growth. This is what makes it harder than ever for the next generation to get in, but what that means is if you can hold on to an Australian property for 10 to 20 years, the chances of it being worth significantly more are incredibly high. Contrasting this to the US, it's a bit of a different story. The US market moves slower than Australia's, with prices typically doubling every 15 to 20 years. But unlike the relatively steady climb we see in Australia, the US has much higher volatility. In the great financial crisis of 2008, the US saw a massive crash where prices in many cities plummeted 30% or more, something Australia hasn't experienced in modern history. And then we saw an anomaly between 2012 and 2022. U.S. home prices doubled in just 10 years due to the COVID-19 housing boom. Future appreciation is not guaranteed. And in fact, home prices can stay flat for years and years and years. But historically speaking, if you're able to hold on to a property for a long period of time, it most likely will go up. The second benefit to home ownership is its forced savings. Every month you are contributing and you're paying off some of that principal balance. You are building equity into your own home. With renting, you are not putting any equity into anything. It is an expense. And so you have to be more intentional and thoughtful about saving more of your money. Thirdly, leverage. Housing is unique in that you only need to put down a deposit, roughly 20%, in order to own the whole balance. Stocks don't work this way. You can't just put 20% of your money down to obtain 100% of its value. Let's walk through an example. In Australia, let's assume you purchase a home for $1 million and you put 20% down, which is $200,000, and let's assume $50,000 for stamp duty. So your total cash outlay is $250,000 to own a property worth $1 $1 million. Now let's assume that home appreciates over the next 8 years by 50%. Now you've made a gain of $500,000. You don't just get to keep 20% of that gain, you get to keep all of that gain, and that is why home ownership can be so lucrative. And even better, here in Australia, you are exempt from paying any tax on your primary residence. So in my previous example, you've made a $500,000 gain. That is money in your pocket. You are exempt from paying any capital gains tax. Now, if you were to invest in the stock market and make a gain of $500,000, you would have to pay capital gains tax on that amount. You would receive a 50% discount on the capital gains tax, so you'd only be taxed on half of the amount, so $250,000 would be added to your income. And it depends on the tax bracket that you fall in, how much tax you would actually pay. But let's assume you have an average salary of $150,000 per year. On that gain, you would be paying up to about $120,000 taxes. In the US, it's very similar. There's a significant exclusion on the capital gains tax that you pay on your primary residence. And as long as you've lived in that home for at least 2 years, you may exclude up to $250,000 of gain if you are single, or $500,000 if you are filing jointly because you are married. Some more intangible benefits to home ownership. The best way that I could describe myself as a homeowner is that my home is the only asset on my balance sheet that brings me true joy. Everything else is pretty much a number in a spreadsheet that I have no emotional attachment to. But with my home, I have so many cherished memories. The fact that alongside my partner, we work together as a team to make our house a home. This is the home that my son was born into. So there is that emotional element of home ownership that's intangible, but I do believe a very big benefit. It's the benefit that you can truly make your home however you want it. So you can do renovations, you can knock down walls, you can hang up whatever you want. There's just so many great ways that you can make it your own in a way that you just can't with a rental. There's also the stability that a home offers, knowing that you can live in your home for as long as you want to. No one is going to kick you out because they are selling or for any other reason. You can really put your roots into and build a lot more community. In Australia, most people hold on to their home for about 11 years, and I do believe that investment in your community can be a real positive for your family. Now, let's talk about the benefits of renting. There are 5 major benefits. Number 1 is flexibility. Number 2 is less problems. Number 3, purchasing power. Number 4, you are shielded from economic downturns more so when you are renting. And number 5, you get to avoid some of those high upfront costs, particularly taxes, in buying a home. Let's dive into those 5 benefits a little bit further. The first major benefit to renting for a growing family is flexibility. Of course, everyone thinks about this when they think about renting, but what does that mean when you are a parent? Flexibility over school zones and school districts. Buying a property in an area with a great public school district can add a massive premium. Where I am in Sydney, as well as in Melbourne in Australia, you can add an extra $1.3 million on average to buy a home in an area with a great public school district. Renting, of course, will be competitive, but there is so much more ease and flexibility of moving into an area that has a great school. The other massive consideration when it comes to flexibility is the ease of upsizing and downsizing when you are renting. Many people purchase a home when they are child-free, and they make that purchase based on their current financial scenario. They calculate the mortgage payments based on their current income with 2 people working full-time and think, this is a home that I can afford. Well, in Australia, where I am, 82% of mothers return to work part-time after having children. That is a massive change to your income levels if you have one person going back to work part-time. The other massive benefit of flexibility is you can test drive a neighborhood before you commit. You may find yourself in a situation that what suited your lifestyle before in terms of neighborhood location no longer serves you as well with a growing family. So perhaps you found yourself living in a neighborhood you loved because of all the great restaurants and cafes and lively night activities, and then you become a parent and your lifestyle completely changes. You realize that actually there are not very many parks. The footpaths are really difficult to push a pram along. Renting can be a really great option to test drive this before you commit. The second benefit is less problems when you are renting. Owning a home honestly just means owning more problems, which is not great for time-poor parents. Although the amount of time you spend on home repairs and maintenance varies significantly, on average between 10 to 20 hours per month on things like yard work and minor repairs, that is quite typical and obviously can increase a lot if you find you want to do major renovations. For our own property, which was brand new when we purchased it, we've had issues with the backyard drainage. We've had issues with our roof. We've had a multitude of problems, and those problems are on us. When you are renting, typically you're working with a property manager who has a Rolodex full of the best tradespeople. They coordinate that for you. It's a lot more effort and work when you own a home. Your time should have a value placed on that. On average, you should estimate maintenance being 1 to 3% of your property's value every year. So if you own a $1 million property, that means on average, you will be spending between $10,000 to $30,000 on maintenance every year. That is a hidden cost of home ownership that renters don't have to worry about. The third massive benefit to renting is the purchasing power of rent versus a mortgage. In major Australian cities like Sydney, where I live, your mortgage repayment is significantly higher than the median rental cost, up to about 50% higher than renting. So this is the biggest mistake that people make when they rent. They do not take advantage of the fact that rent goes further than a mortgage payment and spend too much money on rent. You should take advantage of the fact that rent is so much cheaper than a mortgage payment and invest the difference. So let's say, for example, you have a 3-bedroom home in your neighborhood, which would cost you $3,000 per month in mortgage repayments to own it, but renting is only $2,000 per month. What you should be doing is investing the $1,000 difference into the stock market, into a high interest savings account, into an ETF, growing that money. And that is how you build equity while you are renting. What most people do is they say, but I can afford $3,000 a month and I can get so much more for that. So I'm just going to get a better, bigger property in a better location and blow too much of my income on my rent and not actually put anything away in savings. And they are therefore building no equity whatsoever. So this is a huge caveat. If you do rent and you want to make it financially better, you must also invest the difference, invest the savings, take advantage of the fact that it is cheaper. When you are renting, you are shielded from economic downturns more than if you are a home owner. Yes, I'm talking about interest rates. So this one really does depend where you are physically located. In Australia, variable rate mortgages are the norm, which means that we see fluctuations along with interest rates. In the US, fixed is the more popular choice, where you can get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which means that you don't experience any fluctuations over up to 30 years and you have that locked in. This is probably very fresh in people's minds because here in Australia, between May of 2022 and November of 2023, we saw 13 rate hikes, which was painful, let me tell you, as a homeowner. Of course, renters saw an increase in rent in that same period, absolutely, but rents did not increase as drastically and as frequently as they did with home ownership. With rent, typically you can only raise rent every year or so, whereas if you are a homeowner, you can expect that your mortgage repayments can actually change multiple times a year. Nearly 18.5% of mortgage holders were classified as extremely at risk of mortgage stress. Here in Australia, you can offset that by placing more of your money into an offset account that can counteract the effects of interest rate hikes. But of course, that depends how liquid you are, how much cash you actually have available to do that. So I do believe that a benefit of renting is that you have more consistency. You know exactly how much you are going to be paying in rent for up to a year, and that allows you to financially plan so much better. The last benefit I will cover is specific to Australia, and that is the benefit of no stamp duty. Stamp duty is a tax you must pay upfront upon the purchase of a property between typically 4.5% to 5.5%. Other countries, such as the United States, do not have such a concept of stamp duty. The thing about stamp duty is that it forces you to hold on to a property for so much longer if you want to own it. And this really ties back into the flexibility we discussed earlier. The average tenure for holding on to a house in Australia is over over 11 years. You have to hold on to a property for that much longer because stamp duty is so high. You need to ensure that your house appreciates much more than not only what you purchased it for, but also the stamp duty. That 11-year-long commitment may not suit you if you are in that phase of life with a young family where there may be a lot of uncertainty around your income, around where you want to live. So I've just gone through the 5 major benefits of owning and the 5 major benefits of renting. So which is better? The answer to that completely depends on your unique situation. So it's much more helpful to ask yourself the following questions before you make the decision to buy a home or continue renting. The first question is, can I afford this home now and into the future? Your total household expense, which includes your mortgage as well as any costs to maintain the home, should make up no more than about 30% of your gross income. So I've gone through this experience myself where when we purchased our home, our housing costs only made up about 18% of our total income, and that was a comfortable payment that we could make. Now I've decided after having a child, my priorities have changed. I've gone back to work part-time along with 80% of Australian women who do the same thing. And all of a sudden I'm finding that we are pretty much at the maximum of that 30% of our total income. Luckily, because we went below our means when we purchased our home, we're not in a situation of significant financial strain or needing to sell our house. But that's just something to be very aware of if you are thinking about buying a home. The next question you should ask yourself is, do I have enough savings that I can pay the mortgage payments for a full year if one of us loses our job or we have some unforeseen issue where we cannot work? Conservatively, a 12-month buffer is the best peace of mind that you can provide yourself. That is your safety net that you really want to ensure that you have. If you live somewhere where variable rate mortgages are the norm, can you handle the volatility that comes with that? Buying exposes you so much more to those interest rate swings and economic downturns. The next question is, do we have the additional time and money for home ownership? So that's not just buying the home initially, but all of the ongoing costs as well as cost to your time. So maintenance, small repairs, all of these things really do accumulate, not to mention the significant amount of time that is required to identify a property. Can be a multi-year long process to even find a home. Is this a particular phase of your life where you feel like you have that time to allocate? The next question is, do we truly plan to live here for the next 10 years or so? Because of the high upfront costs of buying a home, you really need to ensure you're able to hold on to that home long enough so that it does appreciate in value and you can sell your home for more than your initial upfront costs. If you are planning to move, if you're considering a career change, perhaps relocating for a job, it may make more sense to continue renting instead of buying a home. Of course, you do have the ability to rent out your home when you leave, but do not expect to make enough to cover your mortgage payments. You will be falling short. If I continue to rent, will I have the financial discipline to invest those rent savings? The benefit of home ownership is that it's forced savings. When you rent, it is all voluntary. You must have the discipline to then invest the savings. You should ideally be setting aside about 20% of your income towards savings and investing that money. What is more important to you in this phase of life? Is it flexibility or stability? Renting provides a lot of flexibility, whereas home ownership provides a lot of stability. If you like knowing the fact that nobody can boot you out, it is your property, you can make it your own, that provides a lot of stability. Or if you value that flexibility of moving around, be it for school districts, changing jobs, if you want to try and test out a new neighborhood, maybe you value that flexibility a little bit more. What is the most important family financial goal for me? Is your financial goal to buy a home? Is it to pay off debt, start your own business and invest in yourself? There are lots of different things that you could be using that money for, and ask yourself, what is the most important, highest priority for you? Maybe your goal is actually to buy your very first home in a city that you never intend to live in, and instead you could rent it out. Those are all great goals to have as well.
In terms of my final takeaways, a lot of financial experts will really just talk about the financial impact of rent versus buy, but it really depends on what your values and goals are. It largely depends on the city that you live. We really went deep into the market in Australia, but it's going to look a little bit different depending on where you are located.
I also recognize that homeownership has never been more out of reach for a lot of people. In our parents' generation, you could buy a home with, on average, 3 times your salary. Now it's like 10 times your salary. So it's a very, very big, lofty financial goal for many people. But even if you cannot buy a home today, now is not forever. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about getting you and your family into a better financial situation so that you are in place to make those big financial dreams come true. If you want to be notified when my next episodes drop, please follow My Family Strategist. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are there any benefits in this episode that I left out that you want to share with our community? Thank you so much and have a great day.